Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Metroid Other M. Oh, lava! In the last part we started off Cryosphere chasing the mysterious creature and we ain't going further this way, so I guess we're just gonna go back that way.
Okay, Samus. Head to Sector 2. There's a high probability of survivors hiding there. We'll have to take care of that freak of nature later.
And now we're done in Sector 3. We just have to get back to the elevator and take it to Sector 2. I don't know why this particular segment of the game is another one I think of whenever I just randomly think of this game. Like this chain of rooms and also like the earliest ventures into Sector 2. Also, not for nothing, it's a super minor thing. I like that you go to Sector 3 before Sector 2. I like that Metroid Fusion and this both make you go, alright, here's numbered sectors. You don't go through them in order because they're not levels, they're sectors. But we do have another one of these guys to take care of. Unfortunately, the game is a little bit, like I mentioned last time, the game needed more combat variety in terms of like what enemies you fight in every area need to be like interplayed more together. Because by and large, as you go through the game, you fight the same sets of enemies in different amounts. Like you fight the newer enemies more often than the older ones. Like that's gonna be one of the last one of those things we fight for a while. And the next time we fight one, we're gonna have I think a few more beams, so it's gonna go down a lot more quickly. I wish you could interplay enemies and things like that a little better, but oh well.
This elevator is bound for the main sector.
I should note, theoretically, this is one of the earliest opportunities I believe you have to go back and get some of the missile tanks and stuff that we could have gotten in the main sector already. For instance, if you missed that one in the vent on the way to this main elevator segment, you can go back and get that right now.
This elevator is bound for Sector 2. A Level 4 warning is now in effect in Sector 2. An irregularity in the climate control systems of Sector 2 has been confirmed. Please be sure to wear protective equipment and use extreme care when moving around this floor.
Alright. Welcome to Sector 2. If Sector 1 was the biosphere, and Sector 2 is the pyrosphere, this was, as you might be able to tell by the doors immediately, this is the cryosphere. We got a lot of ice here. Thankfully, though, consistently, Metroid is one of the few video game franchises on whole that consistently has some form of ice level where ice mechanics aren't really a thing. It's usually, well, except barring, and now I think about it, Prime Hunters, there's not any ice physics. It's just, here's an ice area, there's some snow, there's some ice-themed enemies. The ice is more so an obstacle that you have to blow up than one that you have to slip and slide on. And they're at least consistent with that here. And this has always been probably my favorite looking area in the game because they do some cool stuff with the snow in that it's not just pure white, they reflect some light off of it to make some blues and stuff. Because it's very easy to make snow a very uninteresting thing to look at in video games. Admittedly, I think Prime 1 does a bad job with that. A lot of the areas, it's just flat white with like some shadows over it. No color going on in there. Which is a shame too, because Prime 1 in general is still a very good looking game. In fact, I'd say by and large, with the exception of Prime Hunters, just because that was a DS game, almost every single Metroid game graphically has aged well for the platform it was on. Usually they had a bit more of an art style going on, or they were using relatively high-end graphics for whatever system it was due to however late it came out in the system's lifespan. But now we got a new enemy. This is the Volphon. They're pretty simple enemies because Ice Beam charge shots completely freeze them to the floor, leaving them very vulnerable to charge shots or missiles. Missiles are what you're going to want to use them more so than charge shots. They do have some kind of annoying attacks, and they can pounce on you like that and try to maul you. But they can do a little bit of a weird screw attack thing where they'll jump in the air and slam down, and the hitbox on the shockwave it creates around them is a little bit weird. But if you're spamming charge shots, they're seldom going to get a chance to do it, in my experience. Again, charge shots, really good for enemy encounters no matter what. Unless there's like a bunch of enemies that are very distant away from each other, there's not going to be many times in the game you should use just the standard beam on its own. With that said, this room's a little bit unique in that it has an enemy that only shows up in like 2 or 3 rooms in the game, period. The Fumble Eye. which is this giant guy on the second story. And it's more so an obstacle than an enemy because we can't kill it until we get one particular power-up in the game later on. And even then, usually only encounter one of them after that anyway. And that's only if you go for 100%. The big thing with them is that, barring them being by and large invincible, they can grab you and do a lot of damage really quickly. And they'll also probably throw you down here into the water where there's fish. But you need to come down here anyway to hit that switch, as well as grab this missile tank. The game doesn't do that a lot, where it just places a missile tank like that in the room you're already in, just out of camera. Usually they do have like a, hey, find a way to get back here, or it's slightly hidden behind this stuff. It's not just sitting there, just out of camera. That's the fumble eye right there, by the way. I feel it gets more aggressive past a certain point in this area, and that I don't think it actively attacks you until the second time through that room. But don't piss them off, because they can hurt. I think I died to one on my first playthrough way back in 2010. Now, just as a little foreshadowing here, I forget if I do it here or not. I don't think I do. Any giant pieces of ice like this one that I'm coming up against, you can use missiles to blow it up. And you're going to want to make this area a bit simpler later on, but that's then, this is now. Oh, God. That platform falling out also brings us to our next mini-boss type. This is the, I believe, Gigafrog is this thing's name. Second verse, same as the first. It falls down to the same stuff everything else in the game does. Charge shots weaken it pretty well, and then you actually get a nice little graphical change to it after you do enough damage with missiles or charge shots. This enemy type, though, likes to jump and do shockwaves. It can bat its tail at you every now and then, but otherwise it's just going to be doing charge attacks. It's the generic big enemy trademark, do not steal. That's it. I don't know why, that's always been one of my favorite lethal strikes, because it's just the most deliberate, to-the-face die that we get with some of them. Now, you can platform around that room with some platforms going up to the side, and that can take you back to the door we entered from. But the door that's across the hall is unreachable for us from now, so we want to come down here and take this side path. I think one of the worst parts about that is I believe they marked both navigation rooms at the start there. They probably should have waited until you just fall down there first, because then it would have been a little more of a surprise when you, say, fall down a pathway. Mind you, the way they frame that room in particular, it's kind of obvious you're going to be falling down that pathway anyway, because it's so thin and not supported by anything. This room has a bit of an odd, I don't want to say puzzle, but hazard in it, in that you want to stop right here and wait for the wind to stop blowing out of that tube right there, because if you get too close, you do get blown out of it in your morph ball. The game doesn't do that too often. Usually when you have to do something in morph ball, there's not an active hazard or puzzle in the way in this game. That's more of a Metroid Prime thing to do than a Other M thing. Just kind of stands out. Next new mini-boss enemy of sorts is the, I think it's like Curadian or something like that. They kind of look like space pirates to me, more so from Prime. These enemies are annoying in that while your charge shot can prevent them from shooting projectiles at you, they like to go invincible every now and then by using the power of electricity. You can knock them out with a missile, and that's what you're meant to do, and when they do that, you can run up to them very quickly for a lethal strike, but the window for it's very tiny. They're harder to lethal strike than most enemies because you need to do very short-timed overblasts like that to get to them in time to do it. Depending on where they bounce with knockback and all that, it can be hard to do. With that said, get used to seeing that, because I want to say that might be the most common bigger enemy in the game, because we see them throughout most of the rest of the game, honestly. And them becoming invincible? Annoying. Which, thankfully, the more powerful our beam gets, the easier they get to deal with, because A, you do more damage, and B, I think you start to be able to knock them out with just a charge shot later on. But for right now, we are locked to just using our missiles. Oh, hi there. I don't think you need to fight any of the enemies in this room, be it the Bullfons or the Gigafrog. I think you can just do what you need to do with that ice wall in the back. But, well, the Bullfons stop following you past a certain point, because either they get stuck behind something or you will de-aggro off of them. The Gigafrog usually will try to lock onto you for longer, I've noticed. Oh, God. Get out of my face, dude. Personal space. It's only polite. Now you die for it. Alright, so what we have to do with this ice wall, because it's otherwise impassable, shoot a missile at it. And then, lay a bomb in it. There's something about a wall like that needing both the usual Metroid traversal staples and weapon staples that it's almost kind of endearing, like, alright, this needs more than just your missile. This needs your missile and your bomb. Both your best buddies. Because this game, barring maybe one instance, two instances, sort of, doesn't really have the usual Metroid beam doors, like this one needs the charge beam, this one needs the wave beam, this one needs super missiles, this one needs power bombs. There's only 2 instances of that in the game, and both of them are not until the very end of the game, more or less. And even then, you can't use one of them in activity and actively until post-game. More on why there's a post-game for this game later. If anything, that could have helped fuel exploration a bit more is if, say, you have the authorization system, but there's doors that either make shortcuts in areas that are better than the ones we already have, or otherwise that you can only access with later authorized weapons. Again, I feel this game's biggest problem isn't its combat mechanics, it's its level design. Don't attack this enemy, by the way, because they will actively take down the I guess not stalagmites because they're made of stone. The icicles. They're made of ice, not stone. And actively make your platforming across this area easier. Also, there is a missile tank in here that you can get on your first run through. I just forget to do it until later. And it's not that big of a loss because you do need to backtrack through Sector 2 in order to get everything later on anyway, because you have to backtrack through every area at least once. I think I do it twice by and large. Yeah, you might notice in the platform coming up here, there's a hole on the right side. You're meant to wait until you have this game's gravity suit equivalent to be able to get the missile tank that's in there. But if you just jump from the top of the platform and hug the side while falling down, you can climb into there no problem. So theoretically, moving forward, you can have one more missile than me for a good while in the game. I only realized I could get that now in hindsight, unfortunately. So, oh well. Going back to that previous save point, huh? Well, we're looping back around.
The creature's corpse showed signs of what looked like Metroid predation, making my mind race. Metroids? Here? Impossible. Metroids can't tolerate cold temperatures. They couldn't survive in this environment. Besides, they're extinct. The baby was the last of its kind.
Curious. Either way, more importantly, you can use a charge shot with the ice beam on this fan to freeze it. And behind it lies us a missile tank. I can't help but wonder why they place the missile tanks in the boxes in a lot of cases. I guess maybe in some cases because there aren't enemies that you can kill in that room, so if you walk in, they should theoretically just be marked from the start. I don't know, it's always felt weird. How the boxes are just there. They're an extra step. I guess in some regards, it's the equivalent in the mainline 2D games of, like, seeing the blinker on the map and having to figure out which block it's hidden behind with, like, say... the first one that comes to mind is in Zebus in the original game and Zero Mission, the energy tank in, like, the third room that's next to those screens. But even then, that's a little bit of a reach. You know what, actually, now that I think about it, it might have to do with how they hide some of the missile tanks in the game. Like that one a few parts ago that was hidden on the ceiling in Sector 1. Maybe they want to use the boxes in case they want to put things higher up, so you had to look for them. But there's not many cases they really do that in. Most of the box ones you find in the game are on the ground. There's not really any on the walls. That's like the only one on the ceiling now I can think of in the game. So, kind of weird. Now, I don't think there's any reason you need to do it, but you can freeze these two particular propellers as well. Theoretically, you need to do it to take care of the hive on the left. But I prefer to just jump in here and use bombs. Oh, also, I should note, a major mechanic in Metroid is bomb jumping. You can do it in this game, but the jump ball is there by default. Spring ball, rather. And honestly, jumping with the morph ball bombing with the morph ball doesn't really give you enough vertical trajectory to matter in this game. It's kind of sad, honestly, because spring ball and morph ball bomb jumping can be a really fun way to explore level design in some regards in Metroid games. Like Dread does it really well, I feel. If you master that, you can do a lot of cool things early. And same with Super, and even to an extent, Zero Mission more so than Fusion. But I guess in a 3D space, that would be kind of broken. I think the game that does it best in terms of using it in a mandatory sense, though, is definitely Prime 1. But that's just because I think Prime 1, in terms of a Metroid level design kind of feel, does the best at feeling like Metroid. Theoretically, Prime 2 does as well, but I have stated some of my opinions on Prime 2. I don't think the game's that interesting. But I'll talk more about that in depth when I inevitably get to doing that game. I've been looking into how to do those games recently. I would prefer to do those via GameCube version for speedrunning E-Tech I could do, but if I have to do Prime Trilogy on Wii U, I'll do Prime Trilogy on Wii U. So the big question is, do I use Prime Trilogy on my Wii U disc, or do I download the semi-virtual console version of it? I do not know. And I scream, for I do not know. Kind of weird thinking about it now that I think about it. A lot of Nintendo's major franchises that are like single IPs got 2 chances usually on the Wii. Like they each had 2 games, more or less. Like Metroid had Prime 3 in this. Mario had Galaxy and Galaxy 2. Zelda had Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. Kirby had... Kirby probably the one who had the least, because they just had Return to Dreamland, but he also had, like, the Dream Collection come out on that. No, wait, no, Epic Yarn, technically. Sure, that wasn't originally meant to be a Kirby game, but it counts nowadays, I'd say. I never really thought about that until now. Huh. The only one that really didn't was F-Zero, but that's because F-Zero kind of died with the GameCube. Both unfortunately and fortunately, because I feel they're probably confused on whether they want to do more Mario Kart with that, because they can't. They're the rare Nintendo series that competes with itself in certain regards, even though they fulfill different niches in terms of what kind of racing game you're looking for. He flushed down that turret. Well, that happened. I don't know why that set piece is also stuck with me, because it's the only time they really do something like that in the game. But now this area is flooded, and it does do one cool thing I like, that they really capitalize on this effect in Dread, where when you backtrack through a room for whatever reason, it gets redefined. So now this area is flooded with water. That pillar we knocked down is a bridge. It actually makes this room shorter to go through. So you know what? Good on you, water. You did something good. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in Part 9, we're going to continue venturing through Sector 2 and seeing where else we can explore from here. See you guys then.